Let's bring matters back home somewhat and talk about Sir Keir Starmer's plans to crack down on migrant smugglers. Part of this is signing deals with 3 Balkan countries. This has been done in a matter of hours, apparently. He wants closer cooperation with Serbia, North Macedonia and Kosovo, all on key trafficking routes to Britain and Western Europe. I mean, that surely should be welcomed to some degree, but does that go far enough? I've often said about the idea of smashing the gangs, well, you're going to have to take out Al-Qaeda, the Wagner mercenaries. There's a whole load of fingers when it comes to the illegal immigration pie.
You know, migration is such a sensitive and important issue. You raised it all the time and discussed it quite rightly. In the United States, it played a fundamental role in the outcome of this election. But ultimately, unless you deal with the source of where these people are coming from and why they're fleeing these places, and you touched on absolutely what the Wagner group is doing across Africa, what Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab are doing in Africa as well. These are the reasons why people flee. The criminal gangs just take advantage of that. I remember ISIS, when we tackled ISIS, there was the counter coalition against ISIS, if you recall that. That's how we defeated ISIS back in the 2014. It was, I think, over 40 countries that came together to look at the financial networks. There was a military approach as well. There was the online messaging. There was an entire international effort to tackle that. We need something similar when it comes to migration as well, because much as you knock these gangs out, other gangs will then be created as well, because there is a market. There is a demand for people to flee unstable areas. And unless you fix those unstable areas, so Sudan is the latest example, okay? We don't really hear about it much. We're aware that that country has fallen in half. Guess what? Soon, very, very soon, gangs will form the ability to be able to go from Sudan all the way to the shores of Britain, because we haven't put that particular fire out and solved that particular issue as well.
Well, let's talk about Sudan, actually, because I know we don't often talk about it, but guess what? Young Alex likes talking about it and bringing it into the light of day. This is a country where 250,000 people are dead. That's probably an underestimate. A third of the population has been displaced. We're talking about millions of people. Now, the problem we've got there, of course, is the proxy war taking place and who indeed might be helping. And the UAE, I think, comes under a bit of a spotlight when it comes to who is arming the RFD. Do we need to get real? I mean, one of the things that David Lamb has been doing is talking to the UAE and trying to sign bilateral agreements with them. But one could argue that they are right in the middle of what's going on with that crisis in Sudan.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument at the very top as to who should run the country. That's where this all started from. And then you have other countries in the neighbours choosing sides, compounding the situation. Exactly the same is happening in Libya as well, which is why that continues to be such a basket case. It requires international leadership. It requires getting all the stakeholders around the table to understand the longer-term consequences, geopolitical consequences, if you don't solve the problem there and then. Not just migration and so on, but the fact that Sudan is unstable will cause instability further around East Africa. We're already seeing that. And for Africa itself, 1/4 of the world's population now come from there. When that has problems, and climate change is going to be another example of that, with the absence of food and famine breaking out, where do these people go? They're going to head north to Europe. So it's in our interest to firstly understand the problems and then start to craft solutions. That, again, I can't stress, it used to be something that Britain was very, very good at. We've lost our art in providing the cognitive ideas that we can then place to our neighbours and our friends, particularly the United States. Not so much we do the heavy lifting, but because we understand the world, because our reach, our connectivity, providing answers, preventing things from spiralling out of control.
Tobias, thank you ever so much. It's always fascinating talking to you. Tobias Ellwood, former chair of the Defence Select Committee. I'd say things have already spiralled out of control in Africa. The French troops have been kicked out of Mali. Most of Francophone Africa no longer has French bases. Niger, where France gets most of their uranium for their nuclear power. Well, the Wagner mercenaries have caused a coup there and they've lost control of that particular resource. And frankly, the British turned their backs on former colonies a long time ago, didn't they? Opening the door wide open to Russia and China. I could gas about that all day. I don't think enough people understand the situation and quite what's happened as a failure of foreign policy over successive governments now. Anyway, I'm not going to gas about that.